Lee Tae-ho stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive structure floating in space. The Galactic Academy was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It looked like a giant crystal flower with thousands of lights inside. Ships came and went like tiny insects around it. His backpack felt heavy on his shoulders. Inside were all his things from Earth, photos of his family in Seoul, his old training gloves from the gym, a small knife his grandfather gave him. These things seemed so small now. "Welcome to Nexus Prime Academy," said a voice behind him. Tae-ho turned around to see a tall, thin creature that looked like it was made of blue glass. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Assistant Director Krill. You must be the human exchange student." "Yes, sir." Lee Tae-ho from Earth. Krill looked at him with eyes that sparkled like diamonds. "How interesting. Follow me. We will get you registered and show you to your room." As they walked through the academy halls, Tae-ho saw students he had never imagined. Some looked like giant birds with colorful feathers. Others were covered in fur and walked on 4 legs. There were students that floated in the air and some that looked like walking plants. But every time one of them saw him, they would stop talking. They would stare at him with wide eyes and then whisper to their friends. He heard the same word over and over. "Deathworlder. Is there a problem?" Tae-ho asked Krill. "Problem? Oh no, no problem at all." Krill's voice got higher. "It is just that we do not get many students from dangerous planets. Earth is known for being quite violent." "Violent?" "Well, yes. All that fighting, all those predators, the weather that can kill you. Most civilized worlds do not have such things." Krill stopped at a door. "This is your room. Classes start tomorrow." Tae-ho went inside and put his things on the small bed. The room was clean and white. Through the window, he could see other students playing in a garden. They looked happy and safe. The next morning, Tae-ho went to his first class. It was called Basic Galactic Biology. The teacher was another crystal creature, but this one was much taller. Her name was Professor Velthari. "Today we will learn about different types of life in our galaxy," she said. Her voice was cold and sharp. "Most species evolved on peaceful worlds. They learned to work together and build great civilizations." Tae-ho sat in the back. The other students kept looking at him. A bird-like student named Jix whispered to his friend, "I heard humans eat other animals while they are still alive." Professor Velthari continued, "But some species come from what we call death worlds. These are planets where everything tries to kill everything else. The species that survive these worlds are usually primitive." She looked right at Tae-ho when she said this. "They never learned to be civilized because they were too busy fighting and killing. They make tools for war instead of art. They solve problems with violence instead of thinking." After class, Tae-ho walked to the dining hall. He felt angry but tried not to show it. A human girl with short black hair sat down next to him. "Hi, I am Kang So-min. I study languages here." Lee Tae-ho. "I saw what happened in class today. Professor Velthari does not like humans very much." So-min opened her lunchbox. "She thinks we are all violent animals." "Are we?" Tae-ho asked. So-min smiled. "Maybe a little, but that is not always bad." That afternoon, Tae-ho had physical education class. The teacher made all students run around a track. Tae-ho kept running long after the others stopped. The bird students could only run for a few minutes. The plant students moved very slowly. Even the 4-legged students got tired quickly. "How? Is he still running?" asked a large, gentle creature named Grenth. He looked like a walking tree but was very kind. "Humans have something called endurance," So-min explained. "We can keep going for a long time." The PE teacher, a floating jellyfish creature, made notes on his pad. "Interesting. Most species save energy. They only run when they have to." "Humans had to run a lot on Earth," Tae-ho said when he finally stopped. "We hunted animals by running after them until they got too tired." The other students looked shocked. "You hunted?" Jix asked. "For food, and to protect ourselves." "Protected from what?" "Bears, wolves, tigers, other humans sometimes." The students moved away from him. That evening, Tae-ho sat alone in his room. He looked at the photo of his family and felt homesick. On Earth, people thought he was normal. Here, everyone thought he was a monster. The next day in biology class, Professor Velthari made an announcement. Students, I have exciting news. Next week we will have a special lesson. We will observe a real predator from the rim worlds. The students looked worried. Do not fear, she said with a smile. It will be perfectly safe. The creature will be behind quantum barriers. Even the most dangerous predator cannot break through them. She looked at Tae-ho again. This will be educational for all of us. We will see how civilized minds react to true danger compared to primitive instincts. After class, Somin caught up with Tae-ho in the hallway. She is planning something, Somin said. I can feel it. What do you mean? I heard rumors. Some professors think humans should not be in the academy. They think we are too dangerous to be around other species. Tae-ho thought about this. So they want to prove we are monsters? Maybe. Or maybe they want to prove we are cowards who will run when real danger comes. That night, Tae-ho could not sleep. He thought about his grandfather's words before he left Earth. Remember, boy, the universe is bigger than you know. But a human heart is stronger than people think. Do not let them make you forget what you are. He got up and looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, his real home. A world where storms could kill you and animals hunted humans. A world where people learned to be strong. Maybe that was not such a bad thing after all. The next morning, Professor Velthari smiled at him in class. It was not a nice smile. I do hope you will join us for our special lesson next week, Mr. Lee. I think it will be very educational. Tae-ho nodded. He had a feeling this lesson would change everything. The biocontainment facility was deep inside the academy. Tae-ho walked with his class through long white hallways. The walls hummed with energy from the quantum barriers that kept dangerous things locked away. Stay close together, Professor, Velthari said as they entered a large room. Today you will see something very special. The room was round with seats going up like stairs around the walls. In the center was a glass box the size of a small house. Inside the box was darkness and thick plants that looked like they were trying to escape. This is Project Shadow Claw, the professor said. Her crystal body glowed with excitement. Inside, this habitat lives one of the most perfect predators in known space. The students sat down in their seats. Tae-ho noticed that all the other species sat as far from the glass box as possible. So Min sat next to him. Her hands were shaking a little. The creature is called a Vorthak, Professor Velthari continued. It comes from the rim worlds where only the strongest survive. It has invisible skin that changes color. It has poison in its claws that can kill in seconds, and it is very, very smart. A bird student named Jix raised his wing. Professor, are you sure it cannot get out? Completely sure. The quantum barriers are perfect. Not even light can get through without permission. We could put a star in there, and it would not escape. She pressed a button and the lights in the glass box got brighter. The students could see thick jungle plants and dark water. But no creature. Where is it? Asked Grenth, the big tree-like student. Professor Velthari smiled. That is the point. Vorthaks can make themselves invisible. They are perfect hunters. They can wait for days without moving. When they attack, their prey never sees them coming. If hearing her words, something moved in the dark water. Just a ripple. Then nothing. How big is it? Somin asked. About the size of a human, the professor said, looking right at Tae-ho. With claws as long as your fingers and teeth like razors, Tae-ho felt something strange happen to his body. His heart started beating faster, but not from fear. His eyes got wider and he could see better. His muscles got tight like springs ready to jump. It was like his body was waking up from a long sleep. Now watch carefully, Professor Velthari said. She pressed another button, and a small robot with fake meat on it rolled into the habitat. The attack happened so fast that most students missed it. 1 second the robot was moving. The next second it was in pieces and something invisible was eating the fake meat. The students gasped. Some of them fell out of their seats. Beautiful, the professor whispered. Perfect killing machine. But Tae-ho had seen something else. For just a moment when the creature attacked, he saw its shape. It was fast and strong, but it moved like the big cats he had seen in videos from Earth. It was a hunter, but so were humans. Professor, said another student, what would happen if it got out? It would kill everything in this room in about 30 seconds, she said calmly. But that cannot happen. The quantum barriers are... A loud alarm started ringing. Red lights flashed on and off. Warning, said a computer voice. Quantum barrier failure in Biolab 7. All students evacuate immediately. Professor Velthari looked at a screen on the wall. Her crystal face went pale. That cannot be right. The barriers are perfect. The alarm got louder. On the screen, Tae-ho could see numbers going down fast. The barrier strength was dropping. Professor, Jix screamed. Look! Everyone turned to look at the glass box. The air inside was starting to shimmer like water. The quantum barriers were breaking. Everyone out, now, Professor Velthari shouted. The students ran for the door, but it was locked. Security systems had sealed the room when the alarm started. We are trapped, Somin said. In the habitat, the Vorthak seemed to know what was happening. Tae-ho could see it moving even though it was still invisible. It was testing the barriers, pushing against them with its claws. Professor Velthari was pressing buttons on her control pad, but nothing worked. This is impossible. The systems are perfect. 90% barrier failure, the computer announced. Some students started crying. Others prayed to their gods. Grenth, the big tree, creature, put his branches around the smaller students to protect them. But Tae-ho was doing something different. He was watching the habitat, studying it. His grandfather had taught him to hunt when he was young. Know your prey, the old man had said, but also know the place where you hunt. The habitat had vents for air. It had feeding tubes. It had drains for water. All of these things went somewhere. They connected to other parts of the academy. 80% barrier failure. Professor, Tae-ho said quietly. If that thing gets out, where will it go? What do you mean? The vents, the pipes, where do they lead? Professor Velthari looked at him like he was crazy. To the main systems, but it cannot fit in. She stopped talking. Her face went even more pale. 70% barrier failure. Tae-ho stood up. His body felt different now. Every muscle was ready. Every sense was sharp. He felt like he used to feel in the gym back on Earth right before a big fight. Somin, he said, when this thing gets out, stay behind me. Tae-ho, what are you doing? What humans do. The other students stared at him. They had never seen a human like this. His eyes were wide and dark. His hands were loose and ready. He looked like he was not afraid at all. 60% barrier failure. In the habitat, the Vorthak was getting excited. It could smell fear from the students. It could hear their hearts beating fast. It was getting ready to hunt. Please work. Please work. Professor Velthari whispered as she tried to fix the barriers. But Tae-ho was not watching her. He was watching the habitat and thinking. On Earth, when people hunted dangerous animals, they used tools. They used traps. They used their brains. He looked around the room. There were chairs made of metal. There were computer cables. There was the professor's control pad with its energy cell. 50% barrier failure. Professor, Tae-ho said, do you have any tools? Anything we can use? Use for what? She asked. To fight. The whole room went quiet except for the alarm. Fight? Jix squeaked. You want to fight that thing? It is just an animal, Tae-ho said. A smart animal, but still an animal. Animals can be killed. Professor Velthari stared at him. You truly are from a death world. 40% barrier failure. The shimmer in the air was getting stronger. Soon the barriers would be gone completely. Listen, Tae-ho said to the other students. When it gets out, do not run. Running makes you pray. Stay together. Make noise. confuse it. But you said not to be afraid, So-min said. I did not say do not be afraid. I said do not run. Tae-ho picked up a metal chair. It was heavy and had sharp corners. Fear keeps you alive, but panic gets you killed. 30% barrier failure. In the habitat, the Vorthak was right at the barrier now. They could see its shape pushing against the energy wall. It was bigger than Tae-ho expected. Its claws were longer. Its teeth were sharper. But it was still just an animal. 20% barrier failure. Here it comes, Tae-ho said. The last thing he thought before the barriers failed was what his grandfather used to say. Humans are not the biggest predator. We are not the fastest. We are not the strongest. But we are the smartest. And we never give up. The barriers collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. The Vorthak was free. The Vorthak stepped out of its broken cage like a nightmare coming to life. For a moment it was visible, 7 feet tall, covered in dark scales that shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes were yellow and cold. Its claws were as long as kitchen knives, then it vanished. The students could not see it anymore, but they knew it was still there. They could hear its breathing. They could smell something like rotten meat and old blood. Nobody move, Tae-ho whispered. Professor Velthari was frozen at her control panel. Her crystal hands shook as she tried to call for help, but the communication systems were not working. The invisible creature moved around the room slowly. Tae-ho could track it by watching the small changes in the air and listening to its feet on the floor. It was hunting but not attacking yet. It was learning about its new environment. Then it found its first victim. Assistant Director Krill had been hiding behind a computer terminal near the door. The security officer was made of the same blue crystal as the professor, but he was smaller and weaker. The Vorthak appeared behind him like a shadow becoming real. Krill screamed once. Then he was gone. The crystal pieces of his body fell to the floor like broken glass. The other students began to panic. Some tried to run to the locked door. Others hid under their chairs. The bird student Jix was making high scared sounds that hurt everyone's ears. Quiet! Tae-ho shouted. You are making it excited. But it was too late. The Vorthak had tasted blood and now it wanted more. It disappeared again and began stalking the panicked students. We have to get out of here, So-min said. The door is locked, Professor Velthari said. The security system sealed us in when the alarm started. Tae-ho looked around the room. There were air vents in the ceiling. There were maintenance panels in the walls. There were ways out, but they were small and hard to reach. Professor, how do we unlock the door? We cannot. Only the main security office can open it during an emergency. Another scream came from across the room. A small furry student had been cornered by the invisible predator. Tae-ho could see the creature's outline as it prepared to strike. Without thinking, Tae-ho threw his metal chair as hard as he could. It hit the Vorthak in the side and the creature became visible for a second. It was bigger than he thought and covered in old scars. The furry student ran away, but now the Vorthak was looking at Tae-ho. Oh no, So-min whispered. The creature moved toward Tae-ho, its claws clicking on the floor. Its yellow eyes were full of anger and hunger. Tae-ho felt his heart beating fast, but his mind was calm. This was like the fights in the gym back home, except the stakes were higher. Much higher. The Vorthak charged. Tae-ho rolled to the side and grabbed a computer cable from a broken terminal. As the creature went past him, he wrapped the cable around its neck and pulled tight. The Vorthak roared and spun around, trying to shake him off. Its claws cut the air where his head had been a second before. Everyone get to the air vents, Tae-ho shouted as he held on. Grenth, help the smaller students climb up. The big tree creature nodded and lifted the bird students toward the ceiling. His branches were strong and could reach high places. The Vorthak finally threw Tae-ho off and he hit the wall hard. His shoulder felt wrong, and there was blood in his mouth. But he was still alive. The creature was visible now, its camouflage broken by anger. It was breathing hard and its scales were a dark red color. You heard it, So-min said with amazement. It bleeds, Tae-ho said, wiping blood from his own mouth. If it bleeds, it can die. Professor Velthari stared at him. How are you not afraid? I am afraid. But fear makes you think faster, not slower. The Vorthak attacked again, but this time Tae-ho was ready. He had grabbed the professor's control pad, and when the creature jumped at him, he swung it like a club. The energy cell inside exploded when it hit the Vorthak's head. The creature screamed and fell backward. Part of its face was burned and smoking. The vents! Tae-ho shouted. Go now! Most of the students were already climbing up to the ceiling. Grenth was helping them through the small openings, but Professor Velthari was still frozen with fear. Professor, move. The Vorthak was getting up again. It was hurt but not dead, and now it was very, very angry. Tae-ho grabbed the professor's crystal arm and pulled her toward the wall where an air vent was open, but she was too heavy and moved too slowly. The creature appeared between them and the vent. Its eyes were like fire and its claws were covered in its own blood. Go, Professor Velthari said quietly. Save yourself. No. Tae-ho stood in front of her with a piece of broken metal in his hands. That is not what humans do. The Vorthak smiled, showing teeth, like broken glass. It could smell their fear and knew they had nowhere to run. But then something unexpected happened. Grenth dropped down from the ceiling vent behind the creature. The big tree student was not a fighter, but he was very strong and very heavy. He landed on the Vorthak's back and wrapped his branches around it. The creature roared and spun around, but Grenth held on tight. Go, he shouted to Tae-ho. I cannot hold it long. Tae-ho helped Professor Velthari climb into the vent, then pulled himself up just as the Vorthak broke free from Grenth's grip. Grenth, he called down. I am fine, go find help. Inside the air vent it was dark and narrow. Professor Velthari was crawling slowly in front of him, her crystal body scraping against the metal walls. Where do these vents lead? Tae-ho asked. To the main environmental systems, the air recycling center. Good. Is there communication equipment there? Yes, but what? The vents connect to all parts of the academy. If that creature gets into the vent system, it can go anywhere. Tae-ho thought about this. The Vorthak was smart. It would figure out the vent system quickly. Soon it would be hunting students all over the academy. They crawled through the dark vents for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, they came to a larger chamber with fans and pipes and computer screens. This is it, the professor said. The environmental control room. Tae-ho looked at the screens. They showed airflow through the whole academy. He could see the vent system like a map of tunnels. Professor, can you lock down sections of the vent system? Yes, but why would... She stopped talking as she understood. You want to trap it. Maybe. Or maybe I want to hunt it. She looked at him with her diamond eyes. You are serious. On Earth, when a dangerous animal got into a village, the hunters would not wait for it to kill everyone. They would track it. Down and kill it first. But you are just a student. I am human. Tae-ho was looking at the map of vents, planning routes and thinking about how a predator would move. And this is what humans do. Through the communication system, they could hear emergency announcements. The academy was in full lockdown. Security teams were searching for the creature, but they were looking in the wrong places. It is not in the main halls, Tae-ho said. It is learning the vent system. Soon it will start hunting again, but this time it will have the advantage. He looked at Professor Velthari. Unless we stop it first. The professor was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What do you need? Tae-ho smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a human who had decided to hunt. Tools, he said, and bait. From the environmental control room, Tae-ho could see everything happening in the academy through the security cameras. Students and teachers were hiding in locked classrooms. Security teams moved through the hallways with energy weapons, but they were looking in the wrong places. The Vorthak is not stupid, he told Professor Velthari. It knows those security teams are hunting it, so it will avoid them. Then where is it? Tae-ho pointed to a screen showing the medical center. There. It can smell the injured students from the biolab. Hurt prey is easy prey. On the screen they could see So-min helping other students who had been hurt during the escape. The bird. Student Jix had a broken wing. A small furry student had cuts on her face. They thought they were safe behind locked doors. They were wrong. Professor, can you control the environmental systems in the medical center? Yes, but can you increase the air pressure in one section and decrease it in another? Professor Velthari looked confused. Yes, but why would that matter? Because Vorthax have very good hearing. If I am right, changes in air pressure will hurt its ears and make it visible. Teho was already moving toward the exit. When I give you the signal, do it. Wait, where are you going? To save my friends. But you have no weapons, no armor. You will be killed. Teho stopped at the door. Professor, do you know what makes humans different from other species? She shook her crystal head. We do not give up. Ever. Even when we should. The trip through the vents to the medical center took 15 minutes. Teho moved as quietly as he could, but he knew the Vorthak might hear him anyway. Its senses were better than human senses in many ways. But humans had advantages too. They could think ahead. They could make plans. They could use tools in ways that no other species could imagine. When Teho reached the medical center, he looked through a vent grate and saw his friends below. So-Min was bandaging Jix's wing. Other students sat against the wall, scared but trying to be brave. Then he saw something that made his blood turn cold. The air near the door was shimmering slightly. The Vorthak was already there, invisible and waiting. It was studying the students, choosing which one to kill first. Teho had to act fast. He kicked out the vent grate and dropped into the room. Everyone get away from the door! Now! The students looked up at him in surprise. Teho! So-Min cried. How did you move? It is already here! The Vorthak, surprised by Teho's sudden appearance, became visible. It was crouched by the door like a giant spider, its claws ready to strike. The student screamed and ran to the far side of the room. Teho grabbed a medical scanner from a nearby table and threw it at the creature. It hit the Vorthak in the chest, but did not hurt it much. However, it made the creature angry. The Vorthak roared and charged at Teho. Its claws cut through the air where his head had been a second before. Professor, Teho shouted into his communicator. Now! The air pressure in the room changed suddenly. The Vorthak screamed and grabbed its head with its claws. Its camouflage flickered on and off like a broken light. Teho used this chance to grab more tools. A bone saw from the surgery kit. A heavy medical device that looked like it could hurt someone. Chemical bottles that might be useful. But the Vorthak recovered quickly. It shook its head and looked at Teho with pure hate in its yellow eyes. So-Min, Teho called. Get everyone into the next room, lock the door. What about you? Just go. The Vorthak attacked again. This time it was smarter. It did not charge straight at him. Instead, it moved to the side and tried to circle around him. But Teho had been expecting this. When the creature moved left, he threw a chemical bottle at the wall to his right. The bottle broke and filled that side of the room with smoke. Now, the Vorthak could only attack from 3 directions instead of 4. They fought through the medical center like 2 wild animals. The Vorthak was faster and stronger, but Teho was smarter and more desperate. Every time the creature tried to corner him, he would use something in the room to escape or fight back. Medical equipment became weapons. Furniture became shields. Even the lights became tools when Teho broke them to create darkness where his human night vision gave him an advantage. But he was getting tired, and the Vorthak was not. Worse, he was running out of room to run. The creature backed him into a corner near the surgery area. Its claws were bloody from small cuts it had given him. Its eyes were bright with the joy of a hunter who knew its prey was trapped. Nowhere to run now, Deathworlder, it said. Teho was surprised that it could talk. I was not running, Teho said. I was leading you here. The Vorthak looked confused for a second. Then Teho grabbed the surgical laser that was built into the wall and turned it on. The red beam cut across the creature's arm, burning through scales and flesh. The Vorthak screamed and jumped backward. You see, Teho said, humans do not just use tools. We use the whole environment as a weapon. He activated the surgical robot that was hanging from the ceiling. Its metal arms began moving, holding sharp instruments. The Vorthak had to dodge the robot while also watching Teho. Then Teho did something that no other species in the galaxy would think to do. He turned on every single piece of medical equipment in the room at the same time. Scanners beeped. Lasers flashed, robot arms moved, chemical dispensers sprayed. The whole room became a chaos of noise and light and movement. The Vorthak could not track everything at once. Its superior senses became a disadvantage because there was too much information. While the creature was confused, Teho grabbed the biggest surgical tool he could find, a bone cutter designed for major operations, and attacked. The fight became brutal and ugly. Both human and alien were bleeding. Both were using every trick they knew to stay alive. But slowly, Teho began to win, not because he was stronger or faster, but because he could think of new ways to use everything around him, and because he simply would not give up. Finally, the Vorthak made a mistake. It got too angry and charged straight at Teho without thinking. Teho was ready. He had connected the surgical laser to a motion sensor. When the creature ran at him, the laser automatically fired. The beam went straight through the Vorthak's chest. The creature looked down at the smoking hole in its body with surprise. Then it looked at Teho. How? It whispered. Because. Teho said, "You are just a predator, but I am human. We are the species that hunts the hunters." The Vorthak fell to the floor and did not get up again. Teho sat down against the wall, exhausted and bloody but alive. Through the locked door, he could hear his friends calling his name. "It is okay," he called back. "You can come out now." When Somin and the others came into the room, they stared at the dead creature and then at Teho. He looked different now, not like a student, but like something wild and dangerous that had chosen to be gentle. "Teho," Somin whispered, "what are you?" He smiled, but it was a tired smile. "I am what humans are when we have to be." Outside, alarms were finally stopping. Security teams were on their way. But the danger was over. The Deathworlder had won. 3 days later, Teho sat in the Academy Medical Center. His arm was in a sling and there were bandages on his face and hands. The alien doctors kept looking at him with amazement. "Your bones are much denser than we expected," Dr. Zinth said. She was a floating jellyfish creature who had been studying human biology. "Your muscles have twice the strength of most species, and your healing rate is remarkable." "We come from a hard world," Teho said simply. The door opened, and Director Vash entered. He was the head of the academy, a tall, elegant creature that looked like a walking crystal tree. Behind him came Professor Velthari and several other important-looking aliens. "Mr. Lee," Director Vash said, "we need to talk." They moved to a private room where no one could hear them. Director Vash sat down across from Teho and looked at him with ancient wise eyes. "First," the director said, "I must apologize. The incident with the Vorthak should never have happened." "It was not an accident, was it?" Teho asked. Professor Velthari looked uncomfortable. We were studying human reactions to extreme stress. The test was supposed to be completely safe. The quantum barriers were designed to hold. But someone sabotaged them?" Director Vash nodded. "A group of faculty members who believed humans were too dangerous to be in the academy. They wanted to prove that your species would panic and cause harm to others when faced with real danger. Instead," Professor Velthari said quietly, "you saved everyone." Teho thought about this. So it was a trap. Yes, and I was part of it. The professor's crystal body dimmed with shame. "I believed that humans were primitive, that you were violent and uncontrolled. I wanted to prove that your species should not be allowed near civilized peoples. What do you believe now?" Professor Velthari was quiet for a long moment. "I believe I was wrong about many things. You are not uncontrolled. You are very controlled. You made decisions that saved lives even when it put you in terrible danger." Director Vash leaned forward. "The Galactic Council has been watching this situation closely. They are very interested in what happened here." "Am I in trouble?" "Quite the opposite." The director smiled, which was a strange sight on his crystal face. The Council wants to know more about human capabilities. They are considering fast-tracking Earth's application for full membership. So-min entered the room with a big smile on her face. Tae-ho, I have news. And what news? And they are starting a new program. Survival training for all species taught by humans, and they want you to be the first instructor. Tae-ho looked around the room at all the alien faces. A week ago, they had thought he was a primitive monster. Now they wanted him to teach their children. Why me? Because, Director Vash said, you showed us something we had forgotten. Technology and civilization are wonderful things, but they mean nothing if you cannot survive when everything goes wrong. Professor Velthari spoke up. May I ask you something, Mr. Lee? Yes. When you were fighting the Vorthak, were you afraid? Tae-ho thought about the question. Yes, very afraid. Then how did you function? Most species become paralyzed by fear. My grandfather taught me something when I was young. He said fear is not your enemy. Fear is information. It tells you that something is dangerous and you need to be smart and careful. But other species run away when they are afraid. Running away is sometimes the smart thing to do. But sometimes the smart thing is to fight, and sometimes the smart thing is to hunt. Tae-ho looked at the professor. Humans learn to listen to fear without being controlled by it. Director Vash stood up. The faculty members who caused this incident have been removed from the academy. There will be no more tests of human capabilities without full consent and proper safety measures. What about the other human students? Tae-ho asked. They are being treated with much more respect now, So-min said with a grin. Jix asked me to teach him how humans track animals. Grenth wants to learn human fighting techniques. Everyone is all talking about how you defeated a perfect predator with medical equipment. That evening, Tae-ho sat in his room looking at the stars through his window. There was a knock on his door. Come in. It was Grenth, the big tree-like student. I wanted to thank you, he said in his slow, deep voice. For what? For showing me that being gentle does not mean being weak. When I held the Vorthak so you could escape, I felt powerful. Not because I was hurting something, but because I was protecting someone. Tae-ho smiled. You were very brave. I learned it from watching you. You were not trying to prove you were strong. You were just trying to save your friends. After Grenth left, Professor Velthari came to his door. I also wanted to thank you, she said, and to apologize again. You do not need to apologize anymore, Professor. Yes, I do. I spent years studying different species, but I never really understood what makes them special. I thought civilization meant getting rid of all the wild, dangerous parts of ourselves. And now I think maybe the wild parts are important too. Maybe they keep us alive when civilization is not enough. She turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Lee, when you start teaching survival classes, may I be your first student? 2 months later, Tae-ho stood in front of a class filled with students from 20 different species. They were in a training room that looked like different environments, from around the galaxy. Today we will learn about tracking, he said, not just following footprints, but understanding how other creatures think and move. A young crystalline student raised her hand. Teacher Tae-ho, is it true that humans can run for days without stopping? Some can. But the important thing is not how far you can run. The important thing is knowing when to run, when to hide, and when to stand and fight. Another student, this one looking like a small dragon, asked, Is it true that humans are the only species that hunts predators? No, Tae-ho said. But we might be the only species that hunts them with tools and teamwork and planning. Other species are stronger or faster or have better senses, but humans are very good at solving problems. At the end of class, So-min came up to him. How does it feel to be famous? Tae-ho laughed. Strange. A few months ago, everyone thought humans were dangerous primitives. Now they think we are dangerous, civilized beings. Is that better? Maybe. At least now they respect the danger. That night, Tae-ho wrote a message to his family on Earth. Dear family, I am doing well at the academy. The other students are treating me better now. I learned something important here. Being human is not something to be ashamed of. Our world made us strong in ways that matter. Fear taught us to be careful. Danger taught us to be smart. Hunting taught us to work together. The galaxy is big and full of amazing species, but there is room for humans too. Not because we are the strongest or the smartest, but because we never give up. And because when our friends are in danger, we do not run away. I will be home soon. Save some of grandmother's soup for me. Love, Tejo. Outside his window, the stars shone like tiny lights in the darkness. Somewhere among them was Earth, a dangerous world that made dangerous people. But maybe that was not such a bad thing after all. In the galaxy, there were species that could fly between stars. Species that could live forever. Species that could read minds and bend reality. But when something went wrong, when the safe civilized world turned dangerous, they called the humans. Because humans were the species that survived when survival should have been impossible, and they never ever gave up, ever gave